If you have ever been involved in Article 5, either as an activist or a legislator, then you know there are people and groups out there spreading a lot of misinformation about the Article 5 convention. One of the groups which has been spearheading this fear-mongering campaign is the John Birch Society, or JBS. Now, JBS stands for Just BS in my book, and they claim that the framers exceeded their authority when they proposed the Constitution at the 1787 Federal Convention. They call it a runaway convention. That's what they say will happen today if an Article 5 convention is ever called, and we are going to completely debunk that. Now, one of their speakers claims that none of the framers believed that they had the authority to draft a new constitution, and he is actually going around the country offering $10,000 to anyone that can prove him wrong by providing just one quote from a delegate claiming that they had the authority to do exactly what they did. I kid you not. He wants people to believe that we have an illegal constitution and that the framers violated their commissions when they adopted the U.S. Constitution. So stay right here, because this is going to be the easiest 10 grand I have ever made. Don't go away. Welcome to All Things Article 5, where we do a deep dive into the Constitution's amending provision to break through all of the misinformation out there and get to the truth. You know, whether you're an Article 5 activist like myself or new to this subject and want to learn more, this is the place to be. I guarantee you will not want to ever miss an episode. So make sure you please subscribe to this channel. You definitely want to get notified when I drop these videos, and please share it and just sit back, join me as we learn from the past, get engaged in the present in order to change the future. Now, for decades, there have been people and groups against the process of an Article 5 convention in order to silence the voice of the American people. Now, they do this to protect the establishment in order to maintain the status quo. Their tactics is to create fear of the process, to paralyze state legislators from using their constitutional authority. But this is nothing new. Now, before I get into the detail, I want to confess something, okay? I used to be one of them. I used to believe in the runaway convention myth, and I did it out of ignorance. I shared a DVD called Beware of Article 5. I actually would give this to legislators in my state of Maine, telling them, don't you ever support one of these conventions. Now, the reason I did it is because I was actually getting my information from the organization we're going to be taking a look at, and silly me, I didn't do my own research. I just took their word, believed it, and come to find out it was nothing but lies. And so once I started to really do my own research, I quickly realized that the framers, in their wisdom, they gave us the Article 5 Convention as a check against a runaway federal government. And once I learned that, I did a 180. And I stopped being afraid of the convention. I actually embraced it. And now I've been working on that for a number of years to see it actually come into fulfillment so that we can introduce some needed reforms. Now, I've seen this myself when I travel around the country, testifying on behalf of an Article 5 convention. This fear, you know, at every committee hearing I go to, there's these opponents who just spew fear, and they believe that we're going to lose our Constitution if we ever call a convention. And I think a lot of them, you know, honestly do it out of ignorance, but there's groups like the John Birch Society that do it intentionally. So we have groups like JBS, Eagle Forum, Phyllis Schlafly's Eagles, Firearm Owners Against Crime. These are groups on the right. Now on the left, we have groups like Common Cause, the League of Women Voters, and Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, all working together behind the scenes to prevent our state legislatures from passing an Article 5 resolution on needed reforms such as term limits for Congress, a balanced budget, spending limits, etc. They're using the same old pathetic tactics that the Anti-Federalists use against the framers to prevent the ratification of the U.S. Constitution. The only difference today is that they are trying to prevent us from using the very tool the framers gave us to check the power of a runaway federal government. Here's a great quote by George Washington back in his day as he expressed his angst against what their tactics were. And listen to this.
The opponents, I expect, will endeavor to give it an unfavorable complexion with a view to bias the public mind. This evidently is the case with the writers in opposition, for their objections are better calculated to alarm the fears than to convince the judgment of their readers. They build them upon principles which do not exist in the Constitution, which the known and literal sense of it does not support them in. And this, too, after being flatly told that they are treading on untenable ground, and after an appeal has been made to the letter and spirit thereof for proof, and then, as if the doctrine was uncontrovertible, draw such consequences as are necessary to rouse the apprehension of the ignorant and unthinking.
As Washington stated, these kind of individuals have no desire to be convinced of the truth nor even acknowledge the truth. As you're about to see in upcoming episodes, I'm not expecting any of them to change their minds or their ways. I hope that some will, but the chances of that are highly unlikely. My goal is to expose them so that they will not have an influence on you, especially if you are a state legislator, because it's your authority. They seek to undermine your authority to the detriment of the entire country. Their lies and hypocrisy need to be exposed, and that's exactly what we're going to do with All Things Article 5. Our focus for a while is going to be on the John Birch Society, primarily because they have been opposing the Constitution and federalism for decades with their no con campaign propaganda, silencing the voice of the American people. And most other groups just get their information from them, so that's why we're going to focus on them. They have turned fear-mongering of the Constitution into a money-making little scheme for them to raise money by selling lies to the American people that honestly care about the situation that we're in, but they don't know what to do. What JBS does is to get them to fear the very provision the framers gave us, which is the remedy we got to use. So basically, we are going to take a look at their fears. And also, one of the things they teach is this false doctrine of nullification. They actually want to use something outside of the Constitution. We're not there yet. Let's exhaust all of our tools that we have in the Constitution first before we use extremes such as nullification. And that'll be a topic for a future episode. So now I'd like to introduce to you a gentleman by the name of Robert Brown. He represents the John Birch Society. He's the one going around the country challenging anyone to prove him wrong. All we have to do, he says, is prove one delegate believed they had the authority to propose a new constitution. He's actually promised to pay anyone $10,000 if they can do that. This is going to be the easiest 10 grand I have ever made. Okay, we're going to unpack this slowly because we want to make sure that we expressly show his challenge, and then we are going to answer it in, I think, a way that is going to be just undeniable. So make sure you're subscribed. You want to make sure you get this. You're going to want to share this. You're not going to want to miss an episode. And do me a big favor, share this information. We got to get this education information out there around the country. There's a lot of grassroots people out there that just want something like this, and that's why I'm doing this channel. We got to also get it in front of legislators. They're getting bombarded with emails and calls for and against, and they don't have the time to really dig deep. And so that's going to be what I'm doing for them. I'm going to share with them the truth from the framers, break through all of the noise, and hopefully they will then realize that, you know what, it's time. It's time for an Article 5 convention. With All Things Article 5, I'm Ken Quinn. Remember, experience must be our only guide. Fear will paralyze us, so fear not. And let's have some fun, and the truth will prevail. Till next time.